This video is being released in late October, and with Halloween coming up, it's only fitting that the subject of this one is one of the most terrifying facets of humanity. Identical twins! Ah! They're just spooky. Especially when they're young and their parents dress them the same. Stop doing that, parents of identical twins. It's not cute. It creeps the rest of us out. Anyway, identical twins aren't just a part of real life. They've been a big part of Star Trek over the years as well. Through the assorted series produced throughout the history of the franchise, we've met many dastardly duplicates and doppelgangers of our heroes. So many that I thought it would be fun, or maybe scary, or at least somewhat entertaining, to explore the question of who is actually Star Trek's best/worst evil twin. Because it depends on your point of view, see? What we in the audience think of as one of the best evil twins might be one of the worst evil twins to the characters in the story who have to deal with them, right? See? Covering all the angles. The trope of the evil twin was so irresistible to the creators of Star Trek that it was the subject of one of the earliest episodes ever made. The Enemy Within was the 4th episode of Star Trek the Original Series produced and the 5th to be broadcast. In that episode, we meet the evil twin of Captain Kirk. Sort of. Unbeknownst to the crew at first, the Enterprise's transporter malfunctions and splits Captain Kirk into 2 people, a mild, benevolent version who beams in first and is assumed by the others to be the real Kirk, and a leering, impulsive, violent version who beams in when the transporter room is empty and who goes undetected by the rest of the crew for much of the episode. The episode was written by Richard Matheson, one of the best and most prolific writers of science fiction for television and film. Matheson also wrote over a dozen episodes of the original Twilight Zone, including, coincidentally, 2 episodes that starred William Shatner. Matheson's work frequently dealt with questions of identity and the tension between perception and reality, and the twist he introduces to the basic evil twin concept in The Enemy Within is that the evil Kirk isn't really evil. He's not a good guy. He sexually assaults Yeoman Janice Rand. He's generally short-tempered and abusive, and when he realizes that there's another Kirk on the ship, he sets about trying to kill him, but his actions aren't motivated by malevolence. He just lacks empathy and self-control. In psychoanalytical terms, he's pure id, instinct, and a need for instant gratification, unrestrained by conscience or rationality. Once the presence of 2 versions of Captain Kirk is realized by the rest of the crew, it's determined that the transporter accident didn't create an evil Kirk. It divided Kirk into a version of himself that embodied all of his positive qualities and a version that embodied all of his negative qualities. The longer the 2 halves of Kirk are separated, the weaker they each become. The solution to the dilemma isn't to eliminate the evil Kirk, but to recombine the 2 halves back into a whole individual. The point is that Kirk, and by extension, all of us, needs both sides of his personality. He needs his dark half, with its drive and ambition and cunning, but he also needs his light half, with its compassion and reason. To paraphrase Walt Whitman, he contains multitudes. Or at least 2 guys. Which is all well and good. Despite how grossly the assault on Yeoman Rand is handled, I've always found The Enemy Within to be a solid episode. But as we'll see throughout this video, the true appeal of doing an evil twin story is to give the actors license to go as big as they want. This is Star Trek we're talking about, so the acting tends to be kind of broad to begin with. When a Star Trek actor is allowed to really go for it, the results can be unforgettable. The standard for Star Trek evil twin overacting is established by William Shatner in The Enemy Within, and though it has arguably been equaled since, I'm not sure it's ever been surpassed. I mean, look at him. This is a still from an actual scene in the episode, and if you've seen it, you know that in this moment he is screaming at the top of his lungs, "I'm Captain Kirk!" If you enter a scenery-chewing contest with this guy, you're competing for 2nd place. Star Trek the Original Series returned to the idea of evil twins in its 2nd season. How do you top an episode featuring Captain Kirk's evil twin? How about an episode where our heroes discover an entire universe of evil twins? I'm talking, of course, about Mirror Mirror. Once again, there's a transporter accident. How many Star Trek evil twins would we never have met were it not for the transporter randomly going apeshit every once in a while? This time, the malfunction is due to an ion storm that causes interference as Kirk and his landing party are beaming up from a planet. And instead of splitting everyone in half, it sends them into a parallel universe where the faces are all familiar, but everyone seems to be a cartoonishly villainous version of themselves. Because the heroes of the episode are Kirk, McCoy, Uhura, and Scotty, we don't spend any significant time with their evil selves, though we do get a delightful but brief glimpse of Kirk's Mirror Universe counterpart during a cutaway to check in on events in the Prime Universe, and he's everything you'd hope he would be. The Mirror Universe character we see the most of is Spock, with his iconic, trope-defining goatee. Mirror Spock is a lot of fun, but personality-wise, he's not much different from the version of Spock we're used to seeing. He's calm, low-key, matter-of-fact. Still, he warrants more than a passing mention here because he has become the archetypal evil twin, not just in Star Trek, but in pop culture. You want to indicate that who we're seeing is an evil twin? Slap a goatee on him. Plus, Mirror Spock demonstrates that an evil twin doesn't have to be the exact opposite of the heroic version. It's not just his demeanor. Mirror Spock is a lot like Prime Universe Spock in a lot of other ways. At one point in Mirror Mirror, Kirk even remarks on how similar he is to their Spock. Unlike most of the other mirror versions of the Enterprise crew we see who are motivated by lust and greed and a desire for personal advancement, Mirror Spock seems content with his present position. He doesn't long to command the Enterprise or pursue an even higher rank. He just wants to keep doing his thing. He enforces the rules mercilessly, as is his duty, but he takes no satisfaction from it. He's not evil because of something twisted or broken in his essential nature. He's evil because he willingly serves the violent and oppressive system that prevails in this universe. A system which he recognizes for what it is, but which he assumes can't be overthrown, and I guess if you can't beat him, join him. Mirror Spock isn't a pure evil twin, more of a de facto evil twin. It's the circumstantial nature of his evil that allows Kirk to appeal to him at the end of the episode, convincing Mirror Spock not only to let the protagonists return to their own universe, but also to consider challenging the destructive status quo of his world. Which, as we find out much later, though never actually see, he does. We also meet Mirror Chekhov. He's treacherous, ambitious, he attempts to assassinate Kirk in order to get himself promoted, which is how things work on the Mirror Enterprise. But his assassination plot fails, and he is sentenced to punishment in the agony booth, and that's pretty much all we see of him. If you want real top-shelf, grade A evil twinning in Mirror Mirror, you've got to turn to this guy, Mirror Sulu. He's the worst. By which I mean the best. With a thick scar carved into the side of his face like an open parenthesis and an ever-present sneer, this version of Sulu is everything that's appealing about the Mirror Universe and the evil twin trope in general, exemplified in a single character. He's mean, he's ruthless, he's super horny, which turns out to be his Achilles heel, making it easy for Uhura to distract him while Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty work on carrying out their plan to escape back to their home universe. And most importantly, as with Shatner and evil Kirk from The Enemy Within, this version of Sulu liberates George Takei to indulge his hammiest impulses, smirking and leering and using that inimitable voice to transform Sulu into the slimiest, sleaziest guy you'd ever have the displeasure to meet or the pleasure to watch on TV. The Star Trek franchise returned to the Mirror Universe almost 30 years later when it became a recurring location in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This isn't a video about the Mirror Universe. I made one of those already. So I'll just tell you very simply that I think by the time Deep Space Nine was done with it, the concept had been run into the ground, and I usually skip those episodes on rewatches of DS9, which is my favorite Star Trek series, and I'd be perfectly fine with never seeing the Mirror Universe again. But this video is about evil twins, and even though the quality of Mirror Universe set episodes takes a nosedive, along with my interest in and patience for the concept, those episodes do at least introduce us to more villainous counterparts to our heroes, some of whom are quite entertaining. There's Mirror Ben Sisko, a swashbuckling and scenery-devouring space pirate with his own ship and crew, who gives Avery Brooks the opportunity to ham it up well beyond all established safety limits, which I love. Brooks is the only Star Trek actor with the potential to effortlessly overtake Shatner in the overacting department. There's Mirror O'Brien, aka Smiley, who's kind of a mumbly mope when we first meet him, and then eventually becomes just like the regular O'Brien. There's Mirror Odo, don't get attached. There's Mirror Worf. He's eventually established as the head bad guy, ruthless regent of the Klingon-Cardassian alliance, and he is a guaranteed good time. Michael Dorn's another Star Trek player who always delivers when called upon to swing for the fences. There's Mirror Garrick, who is pretty much the same. And then there's Mirror Kira, also known as the Intendant. And if you're ever making your own list of best evil twins on Star Trek and she's not somewhere on that list, preferably near the top, don't show that list to anyone else. Spare other people the wasted time and spare yourself the humiliation, because Mirror Kira is where it's at, as the kids say. Or as the kids used to say. Nowadays, the kids probably indicate that a thing is good or cool or important by saying something else, like, "That's Spickle Sparkle." The way kids talk today is so dumb. Unlike the way kids talked when I was a kid, which was where it's at. Was at. Where it was? Where it was at? What's the past tense of where it's at? Did we even say that? Mirror Universe Kira, Intendant Kira, so-called because she was the intendant or head boss lady of the Mirror Universe version of Deep Space Nine, is a slinky, seductive, perpetually horned-up delight. She has a regular thing going with Mirror Sisko, who she treats as kind of a boy toy. When she meets our regular Kira from the Prime Universe, her initial reaction is, "Hey, she looks just like me. I'd sure like to fuck her." So she's not just horny, she's kinky. One of the essential appeals of the Mirror Universe, and of evil twin stories generally speaking, is the opportunity to see familiar actors play their usual characters out of character. With Intendant Kira, the creators of Deep Space Nine, and most especially Nana Visitor, who portrays Kira, understand this appeal and exploit it to the fullest. Intendant Kira is florid, capricious, egotistical, flirtatious, fully aware of her sex appeal, and all too willing to use it to get her way. Her personality is as far from the tough, no-nonsense Prime Universe Kira as possible, which is what makes her so much damn fun to watch. That, and her assorted appearances on the show, play like Nana Visitor making an extended audition tape for the role of Catwoman, which I do not mean as a criticism. In the 4th season of Star Trek Enterprise, we get to meet the evil counterparts of the entire main cast when we spend an entire 2-part episode in the Mirror Universe. The episode, titled In a Mirror Darkly, involves the Mirror Universe Enterprise crew discovering the temporally and dimensionally displaced TOS-era USS Defiant, which is seen vanishing to parts unknown in the classic Star Trek episode The Tholian Web. It's fine. Evil Archer and Evil Hoshi are kind of fun. Evil Phlox embraces his inner Dr. Mengele. But I mean, come on, compared to Evil Sulu or Intendant Kira, it's pretty weak sauce. And it's 2 more episodes in the Mirror Universe, for Christ's sake. Plus all the gratuitous, "Look, it's a recreated classic Trek set" stuff on the Defiant. I know a lot of my fellow Star Trek nerds lap that stuff up, but if you're gonna drag me back into the Mirror Universe, especially for multiple episodes in a row, you're gonna need to show me an evil counterpart who's a lot more of an over-the-top, melodramatic, gleefully wicked scoundrel than any of these saps. Somebody like... yeah. Mirror Giorgio from Star Trek Discovery. She's the best. And if we're grading the evil twins on the sheer amount of evil they've been personally responsible for, she's gotta win, right? She was the emperor of the Terran Empire. She must have killed like billions of people. She's just unfathomably evil. We shouldn't call her Space Hitler. We should call Hitler Earth Giorgio. Though in the Mirror Universe, Hitler was probably like a veterinarian at a no-kill animal shelter or something. But you get the point. Mirror Giorgio is great. The fact that after she moves to the Prime Universe, she basically becomes a member of Discovery's crew for a while is fucking bonkers, but also kinda great. due to how bonkers it is. But as great as she is, and as delightful as it is to watch Michelle Yeoh play her, and as cautiously optimistic as I am about getting to see Michelle Yeoh play her again in the Section 31 streaming movie, which hasn't been released as of the time I'm making this video, even Mirror Giorgio, mass-murdering interstellar dictator and insatiable omnisexual that she is, isn't enough to warrant the extended layover in the Mirror Universe we get in Discovery's first season, which, if I remember correctly, lasts about 97 episodes. We never see the Mirror Universe on Star Trek The Next Generation, thank Christ. But the downside of that is we never get to see Patrick Stewart play a theatrically nefarious, deliriously dastardly Mirror Universe version of Captain Picard. Instead, the closest we get to an evil twin for Captain Picard, on TV anyway. Hi, Shinzon. I see you. Your existence has been acknowledged. Now go pull a spike through your abdomen, you freak. Is in an episode from TNG's third season titled Allegiance. As the episode begins, we see Captain Picard relaxing in his quarters, reading a book. Then a far-out space rectangle appears floating over him, scans him, and beams him away. Next thing he knows, he's in some kind of prison cell with other people he doesn't know. He calls for help with his communicator, but gets no response. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, Data has detected an unusual energy reading in Picard's room. Worf heads down to check it out, but when he reaches Picard's door, the door opens, and there stands Captain Picard. And he's like, "Can I help you? Am I not the captain of this ship? Is it not my privilege to get my read on and booze it up while off duty?" While the real Picard is stuck in that cell acting out his own variation of 5 characters in search of an exit, for budgetary reasons there are only 4 of them in this version, Picard's doppelganger is on the Enterprise carrying on like everything is normal. Well, not exactly normal. He abruptly orders a course change, canceling their scheduled rendezvous with another ship in order to spend a day and a half flying to a pulsar. He also forbids any unauthorized off-ship communication. And he tells Commander Riker, "Hey, if I seem weird for the next few days, it's because, we're on a secret mission, and I can't talk about it, so just continue to trust me and do whatever I say and don't ask any snoopy questions, okay?" And Riker's like, "You got it, boss." The imposter Picard, Jean Dupe, if you will, continues to behave in ways that are unusual, but not so unusual that the rest of the crew jumps to the conclusion that he's not the real deal. He drops in on the senior staff's poker game, says he doesn't want to play, just to watch. Jesus Christ, he's kinky too. Then he pulls Counselor Troy aside and says, "Hey, is the rest of the crew getting suspicious about my sudden change in course to take us to a pulsar?" Suspicious? Curious. Didn't I say curious? They're a little curious, but you know, they trust you. How far do you think that trust goes? Like, if I ordered them to do something totally nuts, do you think they'd do it? I don't know what you're... Never mind, it's nothing. Just keep me informed if you sense the crew's trust in me starting to wane, okay? Thanks. Go back to your card game now. No further questions. Jean Dupe drops by sickbay for his annual physical a month early. He insists that he feels fine, just wanted to save Dr. Crusher the trouble of badgering him to come in. Then he asks Crusher to have dinner with him in his quarters. So Crusher shows up to dinner, and they're having drinks, and Jean Dupe says, "You know, I've been thinking, and you and I have allowed our professional positions to isolate us from each other. We've grown too detached. I want us to get closer." Closer? Are you saying you want this? You are quite a MILF. And at the risk of flattering myself, I am something of a mabilf. Is that middle-aged bachelor I'd like to... That's right. So, what do you say? Shall we dance vertically before we dance horizontally? They dance. They kiss. Beverly seems uncertain at first, but then she's kinda into it. Jean Dupe is like, "Are you sorry you came?" And Beverly says, "I haven't. Yet." And Jean Dupe breaks the embrace, opens the door, and says, "And you're not gonna either, at least not here. Closing time, hit the bricks, toots." He's really kinky. What's with all these evil twins? They're so kinked up with kinks, they could open their own FedEx office location. So now the other officers are starting to notice that something's a little off about the captain. Riker and Troy are talking about it in 10 Forward. The sudden order to fly to a pulsar, the insistence that they crawl up to it at low speed, the lack of explanation for any of it. Riker can't pinpoint what's wrong, but he knows something's not right. Then Jean-Dupe enters the bar, toasts the entire crew, and leads the room in a sing-along of the old Navy song Heart of Oak. Geordi walks up to Riker like, "What's the captain doing?" And Riker says, "I don't know, but Heart of Oak was the official march of the British Royal Navy. No Frenchman as proud as our unquestionably French commanding officer would ever sing that. That's not the proud son of France I know." Riker calls a meeting in his quarters. It's him, Data, Crusher, Troy, Geordi, and Worf. They recap Jean-Dupe's unusual behavior, the random and inexplicable mission to visit a pulsar, dropping in on the staff poker game for the first time, showing up early for his physical, and then having dinner with Crusher where he starts and then abruptly stops getting physical. Telling Troy to keep him informed if the crew starts losing trust in him. Plus, Data reminds everyone of those unexplained energy readings in the captain's quarters right before this all started. Worf's like, "It's not enough to justify doing a mutiny. At least not on this weak-ass Starfleet ship. Oh, don't overthrow your commanders. Don't murder your superior officers. God, I'm so bored." They agree to wait and let Picard make the next move. Cut to the bridge where Jean-Dupe is like, "I'm ready to make my next move. Take us dangerously close to that pulsar." Wesley does as ordered, and Riker says to Jean-Dupe, "Can I talk to you in private for a sec?" They go into the ready room, and Riker's like, "Hey, unless you tell me why we're flying the ship into a pulsar, I'm going to just assume you've been possessed by the soul of a dead alien, or mentally enslaved by a telepathic cloud, or infected by the larva of a cosmozoic organism that lives in pulsars, or some other random space shit, and take command of this ship before you get us all killed." Jean-Dupe is like, "I dare you, Beardo." They return to the bridge where Data warns that the Enterprise's shields are failing due to how close they are to the pulsar. Jean-Dupe says, "Thanks for the update. How about we do this? Take us even closer." Data says, "If we get any closer, our shields will fail and we'll all die." Jean-Dupe is like, "Will you just do it?" And Riker steps forward and says, "Okay, I think we're good. Wesley, take us away from the pulsar." Jean-Dupe is like, "Mr. Worf, Commander Riker is doing a mutiny. Arrest him and drag his traitorous ass off the bridge." But Worf's like, "Nah, it's about time somebody did a mutiny around here," and stays put. And then the real Captain Picard comes back with one of the aliens who abducted him. And Jean-Dupe transforms back into one of those aliens as well. And the aliens explain that they did all this, replaced Picard with a duplicate, and held the real Picard in a cell with 3 other people who couldn't get along with each other, in the parts of the episode I didn't talk about, as an experiment to study the concept of authority, because they don't have anything like that on their planet. Picard's like, "Well, don't do it again or I'll imprison you in a force field. Like this! Got it? Now take a hike, you interstellar egalitarian weirdos." The aliens leave, and Picard turns to Riker like, "I hope my duplicate didn't do anything too disruptive while I was gone." Riker says, "Nah. I mean, in 10 Forward, he led a sing-along of an old British Navy song, and he almost destroyed the ship by flying it into a pulsar, but other than that..." Crusher walks in, sits down, gives Picard a look, and says, "Ahoy, Captain Mabilf." And Picard's like, "He led a sing-along of a what?" In the end, Jean-Dupe isn't so much an evil twin as a let's-see-what-happens twin. He plays mind games with the crew and endangers the ship, but he doesn't do any serious lasting damage, and his intentions weren't malicious, just amoral and highly unethical by our standards. The same can't be said for most of the others mentioned in this video, including some of those I haven't touched on yet. For example, Dr. Bashir's changeling imposter in the 5th season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, who lives on the station as Bashir undetected for weeks before trying unsuccessfully to blow up the Bajaran sun, an act which would have killed literally everyone on the show. Except Gul Dukat, I guess. Or the historically inaccurate simulations of the Voyager crew created in the far future by a society that remembers Voyager as a warship that invaded their territory and committed horrific atrocities, though their offenses are somewhat mitigated by the fact that they didn't actually happen. In the context of the show, I mean. None of this shit actually happened. No, for my money, if you want to talk about the best, worst evil twin in Star Trek, there's really only one character worthy of the title. Or titles, however you want to work that best, worst thing out. He's a broad theatrical character who gives his actor the chance to go whole ham. Unlike every other character I've mentioned so far, he is actually literally a twin sibling of his heroic counterpart, not a transporter duplicate or a disguised alien imposter or a variant from a parallel universe. And most importantly of all, he's a total fucking bastard. It's Lore! We meet Lore in the mostly dreadful first season of Star Trek The Next Generation in an episode titled Data Lore. Oh, I see what you did there. Very clever. Data Lore. Data Lore. The Enterprise drops by Data's home planet, Omicron Theta, because Captain Picard has randomly become interested in Data's origin story. They find the planet to be deserted and totally lifeless, not even bacteria. The away team beams down, and after some snooping around, they discover the laboratory of Dr. Noonien Sung, the robotics scientist who created Data. After a little more searching, they find a storage unit containing the disassembled pieces of another android identical to Data. They take the android parts aboard the Enterprise, and with some help from Data, they put the android together. As the operation is ongoing, Data pulls Dr. Crusher aside and says, "Hey, just in case this becomes important information for the audience to know in the near future, and I'm not saying it will, I have an on-off switch built into my back." Crusher's like, "Duly noted. I wish Wesley had one of those." Crusher promises Data that she won't tell anyone else about the switch. When assembly of the newly discovered android is complete, Captain Picard's like, "I wonder which one of them was made first." And the new android wakes up and says, "He was, but they made me to replace him because it turned out he sucks. My name is Lore." And then he twitches. He has a noticeable recurring facial twitch because he's an evil twin, and it's an easy visual cue to tell him and Data apart. And like I said, this is the first season of TNG, so the writing is pretty hacky, okay? Later on, Lore is on the bridge, and Geordi and Wesley are teaching him how to fly the ship, the sort of thing you'd expect senior officers to do for a robot they just found in pieces in a closet on a lifeless planet a few hours ago. Even Riker is treating Lore like a kid on a field trip. Only Data points out that Lore hasn't been officially granted access to the bridge. Lore apologizes and volunteers to perform other duties. Worf remarks on how eager to please Lore seems, and Lore says, "Oh yes, for sure. I love pleasing humans. It's my favorite thing. I'm definitely not any kind of a threat, if that's what you're getting at." In the corridor afterwards, Data and Lore pause to create a meme template, and Data observes that Lore's "aw shucks, I just want to make the humans happy" shtick is pretty transparent. Lore says, "Thanks for the tips, sucker. I mean, brother, who I love. Even though you're inferior to me, try not to be too jealous." In Data's quarters, Lore, after some prodding from Data, comes clean about which one of them was constructed first. "Okay," Lore says, "so I lied about you being made first. I was made first, but I was made so perfect, so human-like, that the colonists got jealous of me, so our father, Dr. Sung, deactivated me and made you the less perfect model to replace me. All the things you're bad at, using contractions, getting jokes, well, I guess those are the main ones. You're bad at them by design because I was made to be so good at them. Your shittiness is a response to my awesomeness. Isn't that neat?" Lore writes a detailed report on what destroyed the colony on Omicron Theta, along with every other living thing. Apparently, the planet was attacked by a gigantic crystalline entity that stripped away all forms of life. Lore survived because he was disassembled and hanging in a closet. Data survived because he hadn't been activated yet. His memory begins after a Starfleet crew arrived in response to a distress call from the colony and discovered and turned him on. How'd they know where his on-off switch was? And if Lore was disassembled when the crystalline entity arrived to wipe out the colony, how does he know that's what happened? That question does actually get an answer in the next scene. Data finds Lore in his quarters, and Lore is in a mood to celebrate. He hands Data a glass of champagne and says, "A toast to our discovery of each other." Data drinks. Lore continues, "And a toast to what a clueless sap you are." Data passes out. Lore slipped him a Mecha Mickey. With Data unconscious, Lore just keeps right on talking, offering a further toast to Dr. Sung, who created him with ambition to match his mental and physical strength. And Lore finally toasts the crystalline entity. It turns out Lore and the entity are in cahoots. Lore can communicate with it, and it was he who told it how to find the Omicron Theta colony before he was disassembled. So that explains that. And now he's going to give it all the life aboard the Enterprise, too. Bad robot! Lore switches clothes with Data and calls the crystalline entity to tell it to come pick up its lunch. Wesley shows up and Lore, pretending to be Data, tells Wesley that Lore attacked him, and so he had to deactivate him. But Wesley's not convinced. One clue is that Data is now exhibiting Lore's pronounced facial tic. Lore tries to cover it by telling Wesley that he, Data, was just imitating his brother. Yeah, that's the tic. After Wesley leaves, Lore uses a handy facial tic transferal tool to remove his tic and give it to Data. Now they'll never suspect a thing. The crystalline entity shows up, and Lore, having fooled everyone but Wesley into believing he's Data, hails the entity from the bridge and warns it that the Enterprise is powerful enough to destroy it, so it had better not attack. Then Lore suggests to Captain Picard that they beam a tree out into space next to the entity and blast it with their phasers to prove how dangerous they are. Picard immediately approves this ridiculous plan, and Lore heads to the cargo bay. Picard has Tasha send a security team to follow him, but on the way, Lore double-crosses the security team, kicks Worf's ass, and heads to the cargo bay alone. Meanwhile, Wesley, who has been kicked off the bridge by Captain Picard for being too annoying while trying to tell everyone that Data has been replaced by his evil twin and they're all about to be obliterated by a humongous space snowflake, returns to Data's quarters with Dr. Crusher, and Wes convinces his mom that this is actually Data. "Turn him back on, Mom. I heard you know how." "Where'd you hear that from, Wes?" "Someone who heard it from your mom? Who heard it from Data and promised not to tell anyone? Or someone else who heard it from Data, who I guess wasn't as worried about keeping it a secret as we thought? Either way, someone in this room is a switch snitch." Crusher turns Data back on, and Wesley catches him up on the situation. The three of them sneak into the cargo bay, where they catch Lore in mid-communication with the crystalline entity. His plan is to use the beaming out of the tree as an excuse to lower the Enterprise's shields. Once the shields are down, the entity can move in and feast on the crew. It's a good plan. Lore is interrupted when he notices Data, Crusher, and Wesley sneaking up on him. He manages to grab Crusher's phaser and tells Crusher to get lost or else he'll turn Wesley into a torch. Crusher thinks it over and decides to leave, but Lore shoots her in the arm anyway, and while he's distracted doing that, Data jumps him. They have a quick robot fight. Data manages to throw Lore onto the transporter pad, and Wesley beams him out into space, right as Lore's about to fire his phaser. With Lore gone, the crystalline entity decides this shit isn't worth it anymore and just leaves. Picard and Riker show up in the cargo bay, and Picard's like, "Data, are you all right?" Data says yes, and then twitches thanks to that facial tic Lore transferred to him. Picard says, "Good, then fix that facial tic, put your uniform on, and get the hell back to work. You too, Wesley. Don't expect any pats on the back from me. We're only halfway through Season 1, and I'm still a dick." Lore returns a couple more times in TNG, in Season 4's Brothers, where he turns up in response to a homing signal sent out by Dr. Sung and steals an emotion chip meant for Data before escaping, and again in the Descent two-parter that bridges Seasons 6 and 7, where he resurfaces as the leader of a cult of Borg who've become disconnected from the main Borg collective. That time he's finally caught and deactivated. Much later, he returns, sort of, in the third season of Star Trek Picard, where his personality and Data's personality are both installed in a new body, and they spend an episode fighting over who's going to run the show before Data ultimately wins out, though this new Data apparently retains Lore's memories or something. I don't know, it doesn't figure into the story at all after that, and it's just an excuse to resurrect Data yet again, because Terry Metalis wanted to complete his action figure collection. Even though his subsequent TNG appearances are better episodes overall, I still think Data lore is the best when judged strictly as an evil twin story. It's where we get to see Lore do the most classic evil twin shit, pretending to be good at first, gaslighting the good twin into thinking he's actually the bad twin, switching places with the good twin, and trying to kill everybody before ultimately being defeated. These are the beats you want to see from an evil twin story, am I right? And in that respect, Dr. Sung's number one son delivers. That's why he's my runaway pick for Star Trek's best, worst evil twin. and why he's the only reason I'll ever look forward to watching a lore episode. Wait, is that what happened with Picard Season 3? Did Alex Kurtzman have a meeting with Terry Matalas where he said, "Hey Terry, Season 3 of Picard is all yours, but I do have one request. Lore." Oh my God, yes. Are you serious? Yes. I'm sorry, I had no idea you were such a big fan of lore. Dude, I love lore. If I got my way, I'd write a Star Trek show that was practically nothing but lore. Great! This is me giving you permission to go for it. I expect Season 3 to be jam-packed from start to finish with lore. You got it, boss! The final season of Star Trek Picard will be a veritable bacchanal of lore. I can't wait. I'm sure the fans will be excited to see Data's evil twin again after all these years. Yeah, I guess I can work him in too. But it did happen. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this one. I'm going to let you know what the subject of the next Trek Actually video is going to be, but before I do that, I want to give shoutouts to some of my newest Patreon patrons and channel members. First, the new patrons. They are Zakaria, thanks Zakaria. Michael Ramba, thanks Michael. Roderick Pruitt III, thanks Roderick. Evan Hinton, thanks Evan. Irvin Harris, thanks Irvin. Nick Butterfield, thanks Nick. Todd Carroll, thanks Todd. Cinco777, thanks Cinco777. Craig Bilodeau, thanks Craig. Bill, thanks Bill. Lexa Power, thanks Lexa. Jake Lack, thanks Jake. WXYZ, thanks WXYZ. And now for the new channel members. They are Jadra Dawn, thanks Jadra. Hannibal Hills, thanks Hannibal. Rob J. Moore, thanks Rob. Jono Zero, thanks Jono. Dev McCormick, thanks Dev. Janzi, thanks Janzi. Flossman, thanks Flossman. Barbara Open Hope, thanks Barbara. Loretta McClune, thanks Loretta. Harry Scholar, thanks Harry. Nadia Yvette Chambers, thanks Nadia. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives or clicking the join button to become a member of this channel. All patrons and members get access to exclusive posts that allow you to vote in the polls that determine upcoming Trek Actually topics, and also submit questions ahead of time for my twice-monthly Ask Away live streams. If you pledge $5 a month or more on Patreon, or become a member at the $5 a month tier or higher, you get a shout-out at the end of a Trek Actually video. If you'd rather give a one-time gift than a recurring monthly contribution, you're always more than welcome to do that by clicking the thanks button right below the video, or via PayPal or Venmo. The links for those are in the video description. Many thanks. If you like what I do on YouTube, especially the Star Trek related stuff, you should also check out my side projects. The Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I'm on alongside Jason Harding and Dana Cole, and Trek Reluctantly, the watch-along stream Dana and I do every Wednesday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on this channel right here. As always, links in the description. Now, for next month's Regulation Trek Actually topic, we'll look at one of the franchise's all-time fan-favorite characters, Q. Yeah, baby! Don't get too excited, though, because though we all remember the good times with Q, the funny jokes, the classic episodes, they weren't all Deja Q and Tapestry, were they? Next time around, we're going to focus on the off-the-peak Q appearances, and we're going to do so in search of an answer to the question, which Star Trek series actually ruined Q? That's next month. I'll be back then and a bunch of times before then. So until the next time you see me, whenever that is, thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.